Having a little bit of a technical problem there because I can't tell where the chat is.
No, that's clearly not a pop-up window there, right? Nothing pops
I
up.
know. Give me a second, guys. We're working on it.
Do you want to try the stuff on top? Maybe they changed that.
Where?
Where the gear icon is. Those are just general settings. No link.
No link. Save. Invite people.
The microphone is off, huh?
Is the microphone working?
No, there. It's
Where?
out to see.
No, that's fine, I think. All of this is happening here. Yeah, this is to mute it. But I can't find the chat, guys. I want to hear from you.
On the left side.
Yeah, no, it's all that, but maybe this.
Nothing, yeah.
Okay, I gotta. Can I? I'm just scared of clicking that because that might. Ooh, this did something. Ah, that's not the group chat though. Guys, can you read me? Somebody give me a hey or something. No, I should be seeing your chat responses. So, oh boy. Looks different, and then in the instructions, we're working on it. I can't get this to open. So pop open a new. This is the window you will watch yourself on. In the bottom right of that window, click on the links text and select and copy a text. It doesn't do that. It doesn't open a link. It doesn't. It looks different. Ay, ay, ay. Can you read this? All right, working it out, folks. I tested that, but the test doesn't look the same. That's the problem. All right, hang tight, folks. I'm asking for help. No.
Text or something.
Paste that text link into a separate browser. I want to see the live chat. I want to see the chat, you guys. I want to hear from you.
Do you do that with the text link?
Yeah, I tried. It doesn't do it. Live chat.
In Chrome?
I'm in Safari. Because in Chrome, I'm not. Yeah, I can't get it. No, screen share. Not this, not this. Dots? Add apps. No, I don't want to add apps. I want to add you guys because I want to hear from you. It doesn't do it. Where's the other page? Let's see. Nope. 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 There's the other window. See that window? Maybe let me go back to the main Hangouts page. Hangouts. No. I need to go to TrueFire.com, my own page maybe. Live Ariane Cap 2. Okay, we're receiving. That's good. I think you guys can see me. That's a good start. I think so. Yes, you guys can see me. But I can't hear you, and I really, really want to hear from you guys. I don't want to just do a presentation without getting your questions. That's half the fun.
Do you want to send me the instructions?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Okay, we're working on it. Hang tight. Bring your questions. We're going to be talking about the groove, guys. I'm emailing it. I got some help here. We will figure this out. So the chat is the issue. And Wolf, you can't test it because it's not a regular Hangout, see? That's the problem. So that's why we can't really do it until we're live. Okay, let me see. Go back to back to Creator Studio. Where is it? For best results. I want your questions, folks. I'm not just gonna present. I want to hear from you. Let's see. Maybe because I'm here. Live. I know I'm live, but I can't hear you guys. Check 1, 2. Ah! Okay, now I'm getting the chat. Hey guys. The only problem I now have is that I'm hearing an echo. That's because there are 2 of me. Okay, now I'm getting the chat. Hey guys. I think I have 2 broadcasts open. Okay. Are you still hearing me? Are you still hearing me, guys? Somebody tell me if you're hearing me. I know there is like a... No, I stopped it. I can't believe this. I think I have 2 broadcasts open. That's the mess up. Can you guys still hear me? Somebody tell me. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. All right, you guys. Thank you very, very much. I need to check if I can hear my bass. I can hear my bass. And can I hear the track? Sorry for the delay, folks. There's always something, you know. And the tracks, I can hear loud and clear. They're a little way too loud. Like make them half as loud. Wait. You can also make the bass louder. It's going to kill me a little bit, but hey. All right, you guys. So this is all about groove. And, well, you could check and see what you hear over there, and then you can just see if you can help something. All right. Guys, thank you for your patience. All right. Are we still on? I'm getting better at this. You can hear the bass. Okay. Thank you, George. All right, everybody. So, welcome. I want to talk about the groove. And oftentimes, you know, you are in a situation, somebody comes into the band room and starts a little riff or something, and you want to just jump in. And sometimes, you know, inspiration strikes, and you got to, it seems effortless, and it seems like there's nothing you got to do. It just falls into your lap. It's as if you're channeling the music, so to speak. And those moments are pretty magical, and I think that what's special about them is it's a little bit of an elusive thing, right? So what is like the pill, the magic pill we can take to bring this moment every single time? Like, I want to have this happen every single time, right? Not just when I just got to adjust my window so I can see you guys and myself somehow. So I know I am in the picture. Okay, cool. Making it work. So that it doesn't feel so elusive. And there are a few strategies you can use, and they're very reliable. So if you find yourself in that state, and I know for myself, if I don't come up with an idea right away, and maybe it's in the studio and the clock is ticking, and yeah, go, you know, then what do you do? What tools can you draw on to spur the creativity of the moment? So that's what today's going to be about. And I see this as 2 ingredients. Do you guys have the PDFs, by the way? Somebody tell me if you guys have the PDFs. I think Jeff posted them. Oh my goodness, Brazil. Give me a quick, where are y'all from? I always like knowing where people are calling in from. Love that. So, and I know there's a little delay, so I'll keep talking in the meantime and visit back. But so those 2 ingredients. And in that moment when you want to come up with a groove, you just bring those 2 back into your mind. And those 2 to me are rhythm and tonal material. it sounds so simple, right? But in the heat of the moment, how does it actually help you create a groove? And if you guys have the handouts, let me know. Do you have the handouts? Let me know. Do you have the handouts? So on this sheet, if you have the handout or not, I'm going to go through it. So number one, let's say rhythm, okay? And let's say I'm having a little track going on, like this. Wait, where is my track? Now I've puttered about so much, I lost my tracks here. Handouts, no handouts? Okay, then I'll go without them. Okay, cool. Groove, yes. Brazil, Chicago, Costa Rica, Annapolis, Arlington, Virginia. We'll do without handouts. I'll make sure you guys get them after the lesson. But all it is basically a little bit of a transcription of what I'm going to do. So there's that. So a groove has two parts, rhythm and melody or tonal material. So, for example, where could you find inspiration for a groove? If you are in that band situation, maybe there's a drummer, maybe there's a guitar player, somebody starting something. Where could you get inspiration for a groove? So, you guys, tell me what you think. Find a couple of tracks here for this. Okay. Daytona Beach, Tokyo, Los Angeles. Very cool. I love doing these things, guys. I get to talk to people from all over the world. From the drummer. 100 points, George. That's a great inspiration. It could be the drummer. It could also be, you know, the guitar player. It could be the keyboard player. It could be all sorts of instruments, but the drummer is a great one. And which instrument of the drum kit specifically would be a good tip-off for your groove ideas? Chords give you inspiration for the tonal material. So yes, we'll get to that in a moment. So where could you, what is kick drum? Yeah, exactly. So I would say the kick drum more than the hi-hat, because the kick drum has a similar frequency as we do. So we need to be aware in every groove we do what the kick drum does. There are two possibilities. Either you play with the kick drum and do what they do. And another possibility is you do, snare. You know, the snare is a different tonality. So while it can certainly inspire you, my first gravitation is always towards the kick drum. And so you can double what the kick drum does. And maybe the kick drum does a pattern in the beginning of the bar and then leaves some space, right? So in that space, for example, you could then, come up with your own little answer to what the kick drum does, for example. Or you could leave it open. You know, that has a certain effect too. But immediately you have something to latch onto. You immediately have something that takes away this dreaded, what do I do? Listen for the kick drum and do what they do. Let's say the kick drum does this, right? That's 2 eighth notes, an eighth rest, and another eighth note. Can you all hear the bass? Can you all hear the bass? Let me know if the bass is loud, because I can barely hear it, but I'll work with it. So you have that as, let's say, beat 1 and 2. And then let's say that the kick drum is laying out for the rest of that measure. And then, for example, you can choose to also lay out. That has a certain effect. Right? Or you can use that spot to fill it. Now, I want to be very careful here, because you have to do whatever you do to serve the song. Maybe there's melody going on, maybe there's a guitar riff, da-da-da-da-da. So open your ears and make sure you're not stepping on anybody. So that's really important. But you have the opportunity to come up with something in there. For example, if you want to make it a little more driving. If you listen to this, it has a certain feel. Now compare that to that. I'm going to fill this space with 8 notes. Right? So now that's an idea. Now I can go to town. Now I can go and check out what the chord is, right? The chord is the second ingredient. That's where knowing music theory is fabulous. So if you know somebody throws at you, hey, A minor, right? You know what to do. You know that that means, you know, root 3, 5. It could mean a certain scale. Some people think immediately when they hear a chord, they think a whole scale. It could be Aeolian or it could be Dorian. It's usually one of those two. If we just hear, hey, play a minor chord. And there's my tonal material. So even with this simple beginning, I can come up with a bunch of things. Let me put on a track here. Are you in minor? Yes, I think so. Golly, can you hear this, guys? Please let me know if you can hear the bass and the track. Okay, bass is much louder. Oh, I don't know how to fix that, guys, because I can barely hear my bass at all in here. So let me see if I do this. No. That's probably gonna make it even worse for you guys. Is this bass now louder for you guys? Track come up in volume. If we do more track, then I can't, I hear all track. And we have it in the room, right? No? Well, wait. Oh my God, that is so blasting loud. I can barely hear the bass. I don't hear the track in here now. Do you guys hear the track right now? Can you hear the track? Can you hear the track? Bass sounds good, I hear. I like the sound of that. Track is super low. What happens if we make it louder here? Kills me. No? Do you guys hear the track? Okay, lower the bass. It was better before. I can barely hear the bass. That's the problem. That mixes better. Okay. How's that? Yeah, that'll work. Okay, thanks, guys. All right, check 1, 2. You know the drill. Okay, I think it's workable. All right, so this, you know, this kick drum sort of sets me up for this whole thing I was mentioning. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. Yeah, that'll work. So I'm sort of playing with the kick drum, and I'm providing a unity with it, because as soon as you do that, it sounds like you planned it, right? So that's what you want, and it's connected with the rest of the band. And now in these rest of the 8th notes, now I can go to town, for example, using my music theory material. So if I know A minor, you know, I can think scale, I can think Aeolian, I can think Dorian, I can think, you know, minor pentatonic, I can even think blues scale, might work. So there's a lot of different options you have in order to fill with that tonal material. So I'll give you a couple of more examples. So, you know, a good starting point, for example, if you want, is you start with just the root, right? Start with just the root. And then you bring in one interval of that chord. Because you don't want it to be too unruly. Minor third. Or let me try the fifth. Maybe this. Right? Or fourth, maybe. Fourth sound cool in minor. Right? So you can come up with just one interval, and then maybe you want to come up with two intervals and mix those. I like giving myself just limited assignments rather than just going to town, because if you start doing that, what oftentimes happens is you get really carried away, and then before you know it, you're jamming in that second part of the measure, and you are kind of not hooking up with the rest of the song. So that's typically not a good thing. Other things you can experiment with, for example, is not starting with the root. Oh, I said I was going to two intervals. So let me just demonstrate that. So I'm going to say, if you guys tell me two intervals. That will work well in minor. And with that track, actually, it's probably Aeolian, but what would work? So two intervals. 15-second delay. Let's say I'm going to use the major second and I'm going to use the fifth. Okay, so here comes major second and fifth. That's different. And you're hearing how that has a certain effect, right? So I want to get used to that a little bit and listen and see if you like it or not, and then maybe come up with something else. Okay, now let's try a minor 7 and a fifth. Okay, that has a certain effect. Now I can take that upper octave, put it down the octave. How about this? So that has a certain effect. You're already seeing like you're swimming in ideas, right? Another thing you can try is minor third and flat 6. I got you, Jeff. Minor third and flat 6. So minor third and flat 6. It's dramatic. Now, as I'm hearing that, I would probably want to put a fifth in there somewhere, because that's a pretty big jump, right? So I probably want to go to the fifth and then the third. Maybe in addition, might get too busy, but maybe. But I like what that does. That's a nice dramatic shift, groovy. By the way, guys, any and all questions are super welcome. Anything about what I'm doing here or beyond, just in general about bass, please bring them on. You know, I didn't even introduce myself, also wrapped up into the technical problems, but I'm a TrueFire educator. I have done Pentatonic Playground for Bass, is my DVD that I did for TrueFire, and we explored the box shapes in that course. I like to teach giving things goofy names, so if you know that CD, then the DVD, then you know about my hexagon shape, my boot, big box, little box, big box, and the upside down boot. I like a systematic approach to understanding the fretboard, so that's what that is, using pentatonics and what you can do with them. Solo over blues, comping, making grooves, practicing them from a technique standpoint. So that's my TrueFire course. Here it is. And I'm also the author of a book, Music Theory for the Bass Player. I'm a bass player, actively playing a lot in several bands, have 2 of my own projects, and I love teaching. I love doing these kind of seminars. Really grateful to TrueFire for having me on again. And I'm sitting in Los Angeles, California, and yeah, just happy to be here. And thanks you all for joining me. Okay, cool. So that was the flat 6 and the 5. Now I want to show you another thing you can do when you are experimenting in the heat of the moment with your bandmates, and that is, you know how people usually say, play the root on the 1, right? That's definitely a good place to start. However, sometimes it can be really cool to not start with the root. If you don't start with the root, what kind of effect does it have? So let's say I'm going to go with the flat 7 and the 5, and I'm going to start the groove with the flat 7 from below. That's something that always sounds kind of good. It sounds like it's a little bit suspended there in the beginning, then it resolves. There's a variation. Okay, I'm going to start with the 5th. That's got a lot of jumps in it, right? Has a certain effect, maybe is a little bit too unruly for a regular groove. But what about the 4th? That'd be an adventurous note. Now sometimes with the 4th you have to be careful because you may make it sound like you're changing the chord, which with these other examples I find is less pronounced. It really depends on what the context is, but those are just a few options to bring in variation. Sometimes the not expected note on the downbeat can be just what makes it roll, you know, or makes it special. When someone says this song is in A minor, does that always mean A minor, Aeolian? That's a tricky question. Not necessarily, Jeff. A lot of funk tunes, a lot of Motown, when you have just these one chord jams in E minor, that's often Dorian, you know. Dorian, for you guys who might not know, Dorian is a mode. It's the 2nd mode of the major scale, so it's basically like a major scale, but you started on the 2nd scale degree. So A minor Dorian would be the 2nd scale degree of G major, right? So here's my G major, and now I'm just playing it from the 2nd scale degree. The way I really like to view modes is you think of a regular minor scale. Like there are 3 major modes and 3 minor modes, right? So the 3 major modes are Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian, and the 3 minor modes are Aeolian, Phrygian, and Dorian. And then, of course, there's Locrian, which is technically also a minor mode, but it has so many peculiarities that it's the odd one out. But and then I like to just keep in mind what are the peculiarities, right? So 3 major, 3 minor. The 3 major ones, they have their peculiarities. I'll just talk about the minor ones. So Aeolian is just a regular good old minor that you will all likely just intuitively play when you think about a minor scale. And Dorian has a natural 6. So that's like the bright minor. It's the, you know, what shall we do with the drunken sailor? It's that note, not drunken sailor. So it's a bright minor. It's a cheerful minor, and it's often used, you know, when you have this funk in E jam, people often play Dorian. So Phrygian, not so much, because Phrygian has a flat 2. And what sounds, Jeff is asking, could it also be Phrygian? So Phrygian has a flat 2, and that has a very like Spanish sound to it, often used in hard rock and heavy metal, but it's like a darker sound. It's often used, you know, Phrygian is often used in dominant scales, dominant context, for example. You can play A Phrygian over an A7 chord, for example. Sounds really cool because you have that flat 2 in there. So that gives you a certain effect. And typically when you wanted Phrygian, you would have to say flat 9. So just saying A minor, I mean, you know, if you're in that jam session context and nobody is playing the natural 9, I'd say go for it. You know, you would hear it. Somebody would, you know, even either leave the space, then you can, that'll work. But if somebody is playing that B, then it's not going to work so well, because then you get, sorry, you get this, you know, and that's not very pleasant sounding over that chord. Yes, they do. The melodic minor and harmonic minors have their own modes as well. Melodic minor, most famous one is the 7th mode of melodic minor, is the altered scale. But that's dominant. You know, you wouldn't, you know, you could play harmonic minor and melodic minor over just an A minor. If it's an A minor 7, however, you can't. Because the harmonic minor has a major 7, as does the melodic minor. So if you have an A minor triad, you could try these, but you will be introducing like a totally other angle of the song, you know. Go for it. Okay, so, and yeah, the questions about that. And yes, Blake, they all have modes and they're all beautiful. And okay, so let's see. Try it, of course. You can make yourself, so you can say, I'm going to try, you know, an interval. I'm going to try starting not with the root. I'm going to use the triad. That's always a great bet, to go back to my example. You know, triads will unleash you. I recommend you practice triads always from the lowest possible note to the highest possible note in every position, and then you have certain shapes that pop out. You know, for minor, always start with the first finger or with the pinky. And you know, things don't always start on the root. You might be up here and look for that minor triad. So you need to know this shape. And then you could also have the root here, and then this shape pops out. You know, we've already had that one because it started here earlier. So to just say, you want to know all these shapes. The minor always started either with the first finger or with the pinky finger. The major, that's why I love music theory in connection with technique, you know, because fingerings are half the battle in this thing. Really, if you have a consistent fingering and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time an A minor chord comes around, oh my gosh, it's so much easier, you know. So guys, please take technique and fingering seriously, because it really helps you out. You know, major starts either with the pinky or with the, I call it the traffic finger. I say sometimes use mnemonics, so you know what I mean, middle finger, right? That's a great one for the major. And again, you should know this shape starting with the root on every single string. Doesn't always mean then that the lowest is the root. In this case, the lowest is the third. But that's how it works out. Music doesn't happen where you know stuff. Music, you're just somewhere, and then you want to know the tonal material. So if you know it from all directions, then you really have a leg up. Jeff is asking if you have a progression that has all major chords, A, D, G, C, does that mean one of the chords is borrowed? Yes, it will mean that. So if you have an A, D, G, C, depends on what order they are in. You know, the A, oh God, goodness, you could interpret so many ways. For example, I could say this is in the key of C, and the D is a secondary dominant. It's a 6-2-5, you know. The example Jeff is listing is A, D, G, C. So these progressions are often used in pop songs, for example. And if you have something like this without knowing what the melody does and without knowing the context, it's sheer impossible to say what key you're in. Because this could, for example, be in the key of C, and it could be a 2 with, oftentimes the 2 is technically a minor 7 chord, but oftentimes we make it a regular 7 and 7th chord, just because it has a little bit more pull to the next chord, which would then be the G. So from the D7 to the G7 to the C, let's say that's just a triad or major, and then A7, brings it back around. That's the 6, and it's very common that we just make them all dominants. Let me play you this. So if I'm doing it diatonically, meaning how it should be, then it's. So it's 2 minor, G7, C major 7, and then the A minor, right? But I can make all of these dominants. It's going to just push a little more into the next chord. Sounds like this. Sorry. This one has to be major 7 because it's the root, right? And then go back to the A7. So yeah, they could be borrowed chords. They could be just, with chords like this, for example, what I see in this is you have a C to a D, and then you have a G to an A, so there could be something going on that does like a repetitive thing, and then I'm just moving a structure up and down. So some of these things, you really need the melody to analyze them properly. All right, bring on your questions, folks. All right, so I was experimenting with triads. I showed you those fingerings. I was showing you how to not start with the root to create some sort of a surprise effect. And the next thing that actually, I should show you a couple of more different rhythms, because so far I've only shown you some 8th notes things, but just to sort of see what different rhythms, what effects they create. And I always feel that you can hear the effect of what you're doing the most if you just play just with the root for a second and listen to this. So this is fairly busy, and whenever your beat 4 is rhythmically active, it kind of sounds like it drives the groove more. Like if you compare that with my example from before, where I do nothing else but just this, right? Let's say I'm playing with the kick drum, and I do nothing else. That'd be great for some intro, for example. And now I start up. Now that has a much more driving effect. This is not better or worse, but because it kind of leads you into beat 1, it's kind of creating excitement there. And now if I can go much busier, for example. Or triads, for example. And it gives you a springboard for a variety of ideas. And if you want to analyze what's happening, it's great to keep the rhythm separate from the notes. But then what I want to do is, typically a chord or a song does not just consist of one chord, but there is a lot of chord changes going on. So I'm going to tackle that next. And I saw that there were some comments. Jess does a lot of straight dominant chords. Yes, absolutely. All the time. Like blues, bass leaves room to breathe in a song. It depends on the song. It depends on the style, James. I don't think that's true as a blanket statement. What is true for any style of music is that our bass line is serving the song. So you have to, it's easy now as we are in isolation, right? We are just, we're assuming or making up in our minds what the rest of the band does. But it's really crucial that we don't step on melodies, guitar riffs, maybe drum fills. So it needs to be done with taste. That's very important. What is the function in that song, in that, maybe I want to, there's an open section, or maybe you want to, create a more driving section. You have a lot of power as a bass player to do that. And whatever it is that you do, you want to be clear with your intention. So I think that's very important. And I think that's important in any style. How do you get better at counting, like 1E and a 2E and a, oh, Jeff, I understand your struggle. I've actually developed a rhythm program because I know that that is a big struggle for a lot of folks. Here is what I recommend. When you are dividing a quarter note, you're saying 1E and a, right? So that's, how do I divide a quarter note into 4 equal parts? I have to somehow, count the parts, and we often do that by going 1E and a. Now, the problem that you run into when you're counting is that counting really involves the logic part of the brain. So it's the left if you're right-handed, right? And what that does is it really pops you into a different space compared to where you would like to be. So we know that almost every single culture in the world has done things with rhythm. It's very, very old. And whenever they did something with rhythm, they used syllables. And so our ability, and even language has rhythm, So our ability to count and subdivide with words or syllables is very intuitively developed. So if you want to count, and this is what I do with my students, I use words. The Indian rhythmic system, of course, is wonderfully, beautifully complex and has a strong and long history with Conical, for example. But there's also the Takatina system, which is Reinhard Flatischler, a guy from Austria, actually, who traveled the world and studied cultures all over the world and was putting together, how they are using rhythm for musical and spiritual and community events, development. So, but to make a long story short, so I don't recommend counting. I recommend using words. Now, the Indian syllables like takadimi or something like this, they oftentimes seem too weird for people. So what I like to do is use words. And for example, instead of 1E and a, I use the word polytonic. So if you want to practice your subdivisions, then, for example, and you have a hard time feeling it, you put on a click. And then you just, what helps, this is tempo 60, which is a good tempo to start out with. But you need to find the subdivision, right? And don't even try to go to your bass yet. You just go downbeat, like this. And then at some point you put your other hand there and you start feeling the middle of this, right? Because you want to have the straight up half point. And then you go like this, and they go polytonic, 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 polytonic. And the 2 O syllables, they should line up with some slap here. Polytonic, 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 right? Now, if you think about it, a quarter note can be divided into 4/16 notes or 4/16 rests. Then you can shuffle these guys. You can do 3 notes, 1 rest. Now, the rest could be in the beginning. It could be in the middle. It could be at the end. It could be, in one of 4 positions. If you divide up a quarter note like that, you get 16 shapes. And all of these, I've created words for all of them. Some are inspired by what drummers use. For example, this one. Weed whacker, weed whacker, weed whacker, weed whacker. That would be 8th, 16th, 16th. Right? And then here's another one. The mirror image of that would be butterfly. Butterfly, 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 butterfly. So by just saying these words, you start getting the rhythm into your body, and you don't have to kill yourself going 1E and If I read a complex 16th note rhythm, and believe me, these guys, even though there's only 16 shapes and half of them are really easy, but some of them can become really tricky just depending on what comes after and what comes before. Listen to this, for example. This is going to be the butterfly, right? And I'm going to do butterfly followed by the downbeat, which is in my system is that I call it ton, right? So here we go. Butterfly ton, butterfly ton, butterfly ton. Now I'm going to combine the butterfly with the rest. Butterfly, butterfly. Now the butterfly starts feeling different to me depending on what comes after. More pronounced even, you can hear it on dotted eighth followed by a 16th. Listen to this. I call that one mega. Okay, so mega, 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 mega followed by a quarter note. Megaton, megaton, megaton. And now this way, if you play that, then the dancers are going to go down on the ton, right, on the downbeat. Megaton. If I leave out the ton and I just play a rest there, it's going to sound like this. Mega, mega. So that kind of jerks your body up, right? So it's a different feeling in the body. And to get to that feeling in the body, I really highly recommend you use words. Cool. I used Indian to learn quintuplets and septuplets. That's great, man. They have syllables for, I learned a system called Takatina, which is more of a, body development, spiritual, communal practice where it's fascinating. You build groups, the whole room is like sometimes lots and lots of people, and the whole room will start swaying in a certain rhythm, first back and forth, and there's somebody in the middle who plays the sort of drum, so the whole room is swaying. If you lose it, somebody will bump into you and get you back on the train, and then you start building polyrhythms with your hands. You start doing threes with your hands, for example, gamma la gamma la gamma la, while you're doing two with the feet, and then you might start chanting stuff. So and then you see musicians in the bathroom trying to count it out. It's really interesting. You can intuit it with your body. You can feel it with your body, but it's really hard to think about it. And there was one experience I had that really drove this home to me. We had this group and they built these, rhythms over a long time, like 20, 30 minutes, and the whole group is doing that. And at some point when you've built like typically a 2 and a 3 or something like that, or a 2 and a 5 with your hands and your feet, then they'll start chanting and improvising, and they'll chant the most amazing stuff. There's usually a berimbau playing on top of it too, and they go lele go lele go lele ba. You're doing your 2s and your 3s, and you lose it, and somebody bumps into you, and you find it again. You're not thinking. If you tried to count this, it wouldn't work. And so we did this really complex stuff. Got more and more crazy and out there, and we were all hanging on. And then she goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the whole room completely broke apart, because that's the logical mind, right? And the logical mind is just in a different plane. So that really made me realize, if we want to learn to get music in rhythm into the body, using syllables is far superior. And if, strange syllables are just too awkward, then use words. Butterfly, weed whacker, movie, ton, and that way you will start getting it in your body. So I hope this helps. Oh, great. We got the PDFs. All right, cool. So you have everything I've played so far. You have in your PDF now. We got them posted in a Dropbox. Very, very cool. Thank you, Zach or Jeff. Thumbs up. I love it. Learning so much out of your workbook for bass players and videos. Oh, that's great, Scott. Thank you. Scotty, thank you. My course, I am so proud of it. My TrueFire pentatonic course. Cool. Yeah, right on, Jeff. And, don't let anybody tell you that you don't have rhythm. I've never not seen this work. And if you really have a hard time, finding rhythms or whatever, a really great way is to just sort of find these, and let's just listen to music and say them and feel them. Sometimes it's too much at once to try to figure it out and play it as well. Very cool. Do you have any tips for building a groove with the second bassist? Ooh, cool, Frank. That's up my alley. I love playing with other bassists. So obviously the challenge you have when you play with another bass player is that if you are both in the same range or both playing at the same time, then it's going to be Mud City, right? So you want to be very careful to either stay out of each other's way or rhythmically, or stay out of each other's way in terms of the range. So if one person is down here, you know, then you can, got my looper here, let's see. Then you can, oh shoot, yeah, I can't make this work. I can, however, play you an example of this. Well, you have, you have several ways going about getting out of each other's way. So one, as I said, is staying out of each other's range. So somebody can be down here while somebody else may be, you know, doing chords up here or even higher, you know, or playing a melody up here, and then you look at each other and swap, you know, that's a good way to do it. Another good way is you just rhythmically stay out of each other's way. It's not as exciting. It's like I get the first half of the bar, you get the second one. You could try things like that, or work out a, you know, a groove where you sort of toss the baton and you are sort of, you know, creating a groove together. There are bands like Dumpster Funk who have two basses, you know, you know, things like doubling works for some situations. But what you can also do is the bass has so many sound qualities, you know. I mean, there's plucking and playing with a pick, but there's tapping, you know. So there's a lot of things that you can do. If I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna be, let's say, up here, and you know, gonna lay down a groove or whatever, and somebody else is gonna be down there. That works great. Also, you've got harmonics. So you can, one of you guys can do, you know, like, it's one of my tunes, one arrangement I did of a Stevie Wonder tune. But, you know, just combining groove with harmonics, which, you know, already opens it up a little bit. If I would play this all with, you know, chords, it would be getting muddy pretty quickly, and that is a danger with the bass, you know. But yeah, staying out of each other's way rhythmically, sound-wise. Pedals are great, you know. You can use like something like the Pog, makes you sound like an organ, you know, or distortion. You can, you know, certainly use harmonizers even if you want to, but yeah, those would be some of the things that I would explore. Definitely stay out of each other's way unless you're playing a groove together and it's like maybe in an octave or something like that. That would work. Or explore different techniques. One of you guys can slap, the other girl can play fingerstyle, for example. Remembering words like butterfly and weed whacker are like having cookbook of rhythms ready to go quickly. Yeah, Jeff, it also makes reading much easier. You know, these 16 words that I use, it's going to be a book coming out next year. But they just, when I read, I see them in my mind, and it just really cuts down on having to figure it out, because again, you know, what comes before, what comes after makes this more complicated. And then sometimes you have syncopations on top of things. So, you know, two of these guys, like a weed whacker butterfly, may be connected with a syncopation. You know, so you would have Weed whacker butterfly. Weed whacker butterfly. And it's oftentimes the mistakes happen where you're supposed to do nothing. I have in those 16 figures, I have a rest in there. My students always want to skip the rest. That's just waiting, right? Don't discount that, man, because that's where when we do nothing, but we have to hold the space, right? You can't just pretend it's not there at all and just do whatever. You have to like hold the space. That's the toughest bit. So if you have a syncopation and you just say the but in your mind, weed whacker butterfly, weed whacker butterfly. I'm not playing the but, I'm just saying it. Weed whacker butterfly, weed whacker butterfly. So then it really helps when you're reading. Let's see. Polyrhythms, if you want to get really weird, yeah, no doubt. Like, it's fun. Polyrhythms are fun. They create a very floaty feel. That's really fun. Cool harmonics. How do you learn what notes the harmonics are? Is there a logic to it? Yes, there is. You have on on every, I mean, you know, it's physics basically, and harmonics are not really in tune because they use natural tuning, not the mathematical tuning that we're using by way of the frets. But it still works, you know, it's going to be a little sharp. But you have, this is your string length. Now if you cut it in half, there's your octave, right? So there's that. But then typically where it happens, there's your fifths, you know, that's 3 to 2. 1 to 2 cut into 3 parts, and then here you have where most of it happens, because these are kind of fun because you can create a scale, but I'll show you how they work. So it's root 3 5, and harmonics speak better if you move to the back. You know, if you're more in the back of the instrument, they speak better. So you have root 3 5, and then if you get, and the 5 is a little bit below the fret. See that? I'm not exactly on the fret, a little below it. And then you can sometimes even get out the flat 7. You can really hear that this one is out of tune though. And then up there's another octave. There's your flat 7. And then you have that on every string. So now I have G, B, D here. I have D, F sharp, A here. I have A, C sharp, E here. And I have E, G sharp, B here. B, D sharp, E down here. And so you can create a scale. Not every single one of them, but G major you can create. G, F sharp, E, D. Now that's going to be, no wait, you can create... You can't create a whole scale. I'm using my 6th string. So you can create half of a D, almost all of D. So D, C sharp, A. Where am I at? G, B, D. I'm sitting on a. No, it's actually it's an A major. A, G sharp, E, but that's the end of it. And so now you can go A. A mixolydian. There you go. So if it's A mixolydian, then you are actually creating a D major scale, but it doesn't fit like you could play the whole scale. You know, you're always gonna end up with just half a scale. You can't just play the whole scale, but you have the notes out of it. So D, C sharp, A, C sharp, D, you know, and then D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, you know. So or you can think of it as A mixolydian. There are a few cool uses of it. For example, this one is great. That's Jocko for you. You're using the B and the F sharp here, and that creates a nice E minor 9. Or also down here, that's then an E minor with the D and the G. You know, so that's some of the uses. But you can play. The depends on some melodies you can play in all harmonics. So yeah, they twist your mind a little bit because you're used to this being, you know, not a, you're used to the notes being like this would be, this is an F sharp and this is an F sharp, but this one is an A in a harmonic and it's an F in the regular bass. So it's different. And then of course you can teach yourself to do pinch harmonics, where you create a very light touch on your thumb, and then you move. You know, you have to sort of always keep the octave in your mind with that part. When you play harmonics like this, if you use compression, it makes them speak better, and it's easier to get a good tone out of them. They're also fun on the fretless, because then you can, like, move them, slide them up, and keep the harmonic going. Yeah, those harmonics just go to town. That's really fun. If I can tell, Scotty is asking if I can tell that I am in the right note in the song or in the wrong note in the song. Does that mean I have a good ear for music? I just need to keep training it every day. So I think ear training is definitely a good thing to do every day. My favorite ear training program is the Functional Ear Trainer. I know there's a lot of apps out that just give you like practicing the intervals, which, yeah, it's good to know, and a good theory training to hear and be able to hear the difference between, you know, a major second and a major seventh or whatever. But I think that's just half the story, especially for us bass players. It's always this relationship with the root that we need to know. And I love functional ear training. What functional ear training does is it relates the note to a root. Like when I practice scales or work on scales with my students, I also always do it always in relationship to the root. So you know, a great way to practice scales and also for your ears is to, let's say I'm playing A major, right? Play the root in between every single note and tell yourself to reinforce it, what you're hearing, what the intervals are you're playing. So I'm playing a major second, major third, a fourth, a perfect fifth, a major sixth, a major seven, and an octave, right? And if you do that, then all of a sudden when you like say you want a solo or something and you start thinking in scale degrees, you start thinking in numbers, then the number 4 will mean something, right? Because you will know it's the 4th scale degree, so it has a certain sound to it. And that's why I love functional ear training. Functional ear training, you know, gives you a cadence. So now we know what the root is, right? A, keep it in your mind. And then we play a note out of that. And in your mind, you want to still hear that root and then analyze the intervals. It's called functional ear training. There's a free as a website, miles.be, Miles, like Miles Davis, a guy in Belgium who's created it. It's completely free, but you can buy him a cup of coffee, and I really recommend it. It's miles.be and then functional ear trainer. And there's an app now, I hear. I haven't checked that out, but people tell me that he has an app out now as well. And I just do it on the computer. And there's a lot of, you know, you can, it's just do the method. That's what you want to click, do the method, because it goes through every single note in the major scale. So I highly, highly recommend it. 10 minutes of that every day. And you are hooked up, because ear training is like muscle training, you know. And if you can hear the root or if you can hear the bass, that's a good start. But there's much more beyond that, identifying chords and all that stuff. And, you know, once you're done with the functional ear trainer, there's other things you can practice, like chord progressions and things like that. Jeff, got to sign off. Cheers. Cool. Yeah, guys, I just, I had so much more planned. But with our grooves, the next thing that I then do, and you can actually see that on your handouts, but the next thing that I then do is I want to lay that over a chord progression. And especially if I want to learn, you know, I want to always be comprehensive. And let's say I'm in a certain tonality, then I want to play every single chord that I can build in that tonality. And, you know, then I get to do the diatonic cycle, which is something that's always super fun to practice. It's one of my favorite things to teach because people really pick up on that logic of the diatonic cycle. I'll just play you one. Let's see if I can find that. Bring on the questions, folks. I think I should start winding down. I know there are probably TrueFire folks here who need me to wind down as well. But let me just, let's say, so I got my tonal material and I got my rhythm, and my tonal material, I don't have my tonal material. Let's just pretend I'm gonna do diatonic cycle in minor, and I'm gonna do 1-8, 1-3, 2-1-5. Now, what are those numbers again, right? Like the functional ear trainer. So A minor, basically the same notes as C major, so no black keys. Piano is so easy, it's color coded. We have all these notes a bunch of times here everywhere. But you have this option of, you know, just again, my rhythm is going to be, right? So that's my rhythm. Just random assignment. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to use 1-8, 1-3, 2-1-5, right? You can write those numbers down for yourself. And I love using, there's so many songs that go through the entire diatonic cycle, guys. It's really worth practicing the diatonic cycle. Diatonic cycle is basically using only notes out of the scale for the chords, and then going not in the order of the scale, but in the order of descending fifths, or ascending fourths if you want. I prefer if you call it descending fifths because it really gives a nod to the function of that particular chord progression. And you will recognize this immediately. The good part is also, now I lost the chat. Holy cow, where are you guys? The good part about it is also that when you make a mistake, you'll immediately hear it. So this one is a song that is entirely made out of the diatonic cycle. It's "I Will Survive," but there's so many, like Europa, Santana, Still Got the Blues, Autumn Leaves. So they are all the entire diatonic cycle. Those tunes I just mentioned are in minor, but there are also some in major, like "Fly Me to the Moon," and they step through the chords in the order of descending fifths. So instead of going C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, I go C to the F, to the B, to the E, to the A, to the D, to the G, to the C. And some of you guys may say, well, wait, F is the fourth. Yes, F is the fourth as seen from C major. But F to C is actually like a 5-1. Like it's like a mini 5-1. I know we're in C, but it sounds so cool because it's a really strong bass progression. You know, it sounds like it wants to resolve. It sounds like 5-1, right? Even though I'm playing 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. Here it is. Let me just play it for you. You will immediately feel the familiarity of it. So 1-8, 1-3, 2, 1-5, 1-8. Now that E, of course, had a G sharp in it, because if I play a G, it sounds kind of dull. That's the reason why the harmonic minor and the melodic minor exists, so that I can sneak in that G sharp, because it sounds so much better if that resolves to A minor rather than this. It sounds a bit dull, so I'm just going to raise that G sharp and create a leading tone. All right, guys. Any more questions here? I have a gift for y'all. I have a course out, and I'm giving you guys a coupon. I usually don't do that, so this is really special for my TrueFire friends. And that coupon is TrueFire. If you go to writeon.arispacblog.com and during checkout input TrueFire, it's only going to be valid for, I think we put Saturday. I think so. So TrueFire, all lowercase, and there's 10% off my course. My course is an in-depth 20 week music theory course. My book is Music Theory for the Bass Player. Just recently got updated. We have a little bit of no major changes. Don't run out and get the new one if you have the old version. But we just made a few adjustments and layout, and even found a couple more typos. So this is all done. But don't go out and get the new one. And please do check out my TrueFire course, Pentatonic Playground for Bass. Here it is. Was super fun to go down to Florida and create it. So I'm very happy with this course. Very proud of it. So it has got a lot of technique in it. It talks about those 5 shapes I was talking about, systematic, all over the fretboard, and what to do with pentatonics. Why are they so important? You know, so fun stuff. Is there another question? Blake says, how to get smoother tuplets? I tend to catch myself accenting notes. You mean just tuplets? So tuplet, it makes it a tuplet if the general count is in 3. So I think you're meaning just 8th notes, right? But in either event, whether it's tuplets or just 8th notes, what you want to do in order to, and that's a great question, I'm glad you're asking it, because it's really important to be able to sound as evenly as possible. That's super important. So there's a couple of things you can do. First of all, your fingers are different length, right? So if the string comes in right here, this finger is gonna pick much more meat than this finger in relation to the string, right? There's gonna be much more meat picking the string rather than on this finger. So in order to make up for it, I slightly tilt my fingers towards the bridge, which creates a more even playing field. And then by doing that, I get the finger to grab just about the same amount of string as you know, between the 2 fingers. So that helps. Another thing that helps is, you know, that whether you play back here, which is more the Jaco sound, or up here, which is more like a little bit of a jazzy sound, depending on where you are in relationship to your pickups, you're going to get a different tone. So I'm going to, if I really have, you know, steady 8th notes or something, I'm going to make a little micro movement where I'm actually really trying to stay at the exact same spot. See that? So that helps. Sometimes I'm big on alternating. Index, middle, no matter, you know, what I do. I'm big on alternating. I want this automated. I don't want to have to think about it. That said, sometimes when you have to play a really steady groove, it might work out really well if you just stay with 1 finger, because then you can mitigate that difference in fingers. But I'm really glad that you're asking this kind of question, because that's the nooks and crannies. When you're in the studio, you know, the evenness, the precision, the good technique, that's where it really pays off. So it's great to work on those things. How to get, quintuplets, accenting the 1 and 4. Well, if you want to accent something, then you just make that a little bit louder. You want to have so much control. See, and that's really good. The quintuplets is an interesting one, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I started with the index, right? Index, middle, index, and middle. So in order to be really even, I have to, you know, make sure I make up for the different finger lengths. And then accenting the 1 and 4 on top of it. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you want to train yourself to have consistency with different loudnesses. You know, it doesn't put your wrist in a bad position. Not at all, George. A lot of people worry about this, but and this will be the last one I take. here's the thing. Wrists are made to bend. They are made to bend. We run into trouble when we have tension. And tension is your enemy anyways, because when the music can't flow, if you're, you know, over tight, if you're pulling up your shoulder or gripping here, or, you know, have the squeezing pistol grip going on, you know, whenever tension is happening, it's the enemy of precision, it's the enemy of groove, it's the enemy of comfort. You know, if you look at somebody and they're all bunched up, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. So the more relaxed you can get yourself to play, the fewer calories, so to speak, you're expending. And I spend a lot of time with my students working on that, because if you're relaxed and if you don't make more movement than you absolutely have to, you have so much more precision. And there's lots of exercises you can use. But as for your question about the wrist, so no tension, that's number one. And there's, you know, lots of exercises you can do. And one is you remind your body of relaxation whenever you drop the hand. So when you feel like you're pulling or you're doing this, you know, a lot of people, in order to keep the wrist straight, do this sort of thing. I think this puts a lot of strain on your shoulder blade. It makes you have to hold this here, you know, unless you have your bass down at your knees, but then that has other problems also for the left hand. So my preferred position is to just sort of rest my upper arm right here, about a third in, rest it here. And then I always say, you know, like as if you're holding a cigarette, right? You're just completely relaxed. And then you just grip into your strings, and there you are. It's nothing extra you have to do. Maybe, you know, tilting your fingers a little bit. That's it. You'll run into trouble if you have tension. And the tension often happens when we do this. I also want to say this. The weight of this arm, right, creates a slight forward movement for the neck. And that forward movement can help your left hand. So see, it's all connected. And if you go in this way with the bass body, and then your left hand gets a little bit of support, you don't need to use the thumb so much. See, so I like to have this part, the fretting finger, and the strap. That's why I like these wide straps. I like to feel my bass wedged in right here, and I have a lot of control, and it affords me to relax my shoulder, it affords me to relax my arm, and no problems with the wrist whatsoever. So just gotta stay loose, gotta stay relaxed. When we hold tension while we do something fast, that's when we run into trouble. There's lots of technique in my book. There's an entire chapter on technique, chapter 12 or 13. All right, guys. I've kept you over. We had a little bit of trouble getting it rolling, but I finally figured out the right button. It's always such a pleasure to be on with TrueFire. I'm honored to be part of the faculty. Muriel Anderson, good friend of mine, and Mimi Fox, some of your faculty, and Tierra Negra, who did a great flamenco DVD for TrueFire. I think they did 2 of them. So just some folks I know and love playing with. So yeah, I hope you check out my course, Pentatonic Playground for Bass. And same when I'm standing. Yes, George, absolutely. And my strap length is the same whether I'm I have all sorts of pedals here, so I can barely stand up. But see, nothing really changes. It shifts slightly to the side, but that's very comfortable for me. I also play 6-string, and I do a lot of tapping. That's a whole different animal, but that's also because the movement is very different. All right, you guys. I'm sending my thanks to all the corners of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the great questions. And thanks to TrueFire for having me. And I hope we sign on again soon, and I see you online. Cool.